It's kind of depressing that a lot of the teenagers doing these predatory acts with younger children were most likely groomed and abused when they were young and grew up to think that was okay for them to do, or even was doing it because of peer pressure from the person/people that abused them. My groomer, who is the most disgusting person I've ever met, started doing it when he was 16 to 17. He was R-worded by his father. I wonder how old they were though. And he used that as a way to justify his actions to our age gap, saying it was his father's fault. A lot of the time I do think about if that didn't happen, would he still have done it? But no. Whether you grew up with that or you didn't, it will never excuse their actions. I did think about how sad it was, but then again I couldn't justify that. I do agree with you that I wish he could have gotten the help he needed, which is why I think that minors, and here's the minor crisis thing again, and then according to some people, anything older than like 16 or 15 is no longer a quote-unquote teenager and it's an adult, and if they're dating a 16-year-old at 17, they're quote-unquote pedo and stuff like that. So there's so much stuff with the Gerontophile agenda and minor crisis that like it's just all weird. And even the people that's claiming that adolescence is only to 16 and weird stuff like that, it's only to 17. And there's literally kids that'll try to argue with this because they're being brainwashed into the Gerontophile agenda. But anywho, whom haven't committed a crime should be reintegrated when they're being abused. And it's like, what do they really mean reintegrated? First of all, there's a lot of questions with this, which I assume they mean that they should be institutionalized, but overall, there is no help for anybody in any situation, and definitely not in any situation that revolves around abuse, and definitely not any situation like what he had going on. And I wonder, did it happen in the past, or was he still actively being assaulted or abused pretty much? When they are being abused or having those thoughts or urges, but once you commit a physical act, it becomes impossible for reintegration. I don't like this idea at all. And I think that one of the unfortunate things about it is that, especially when it comes to younger people, along with the Gerontophile agenda, people who have been or are being victimized are now like kind of stumbling over each other and like hitting each other in the heads with like ping pong balls and stuff, pretty much. I guess that's how I could describe it. And one of the most annoying things about it is that younger people already get life sentences for doing the same things or even lesser things that older people, fully grown people, don't even get charged for or even looked at funny for. And that's even something I noticed a lot with the Gerontophile agenda, which is one of the many reasons why I was able to easily, quickly point it out and put a name to it. Because why is 17 to 16, 17 to 15, 18 and 17 things like 20 and 21 and 20, why is that bad? But at 17 it's okay if you're with a 35-year-old. If you're 18 or 21, it's okay if you're with a 40-year-old. Why is that okay? But then younger people dating people their own age is now all of a sudden bad and people feel guilty for it, which I'm going to go into. In fact, I forgot these screenshots were even right here because that's not actually what I was going to read for this video. But anywho, there's a lot of issues with this, and then I wonder, like, was he ever reported? Not that I really think anything would happen, but was the dad reported? How were they when they met the person? Where did they meet the person? And then as far as using the dad as an excuse, one thing I'll say with this, especially that I learned from like my own issues that I had since 3, is that I'm really glad that I was already really spiritually in tune and already knew that like possession was a real thing, and I already knew like the name possession and even lust spirits and stuff like that. But I eventually did find out about the marine kingdom. I found out about the incubus and succubus spirits at 8, but that was before I had even found out about the term marine kingdom by 14, which I found out about that term really when I was researching personality disorders, and especially what's considered quote-unquote narcissism, or the Jezebel spirit and Leviathan spirit and a few other ones. And but my point is, a lot of people don't believe in that stuff, but to really be able to get over any of these issues, you have to know the spiritual and physical side, the trauma side, also You have to be able to get away from the situation that's screwing you up, which majority of people aren't able to do that due to all the legal stuff with that. And they'll get locked up for trying to leave and framed and all types of stuff. And you have to like know that it's wrong. I wasn't in a situation like that, so I didn't want to blame anybody else, but I didn't have anyone to like, I wasn't in a situation where somebody was like doing something to me anyways to be able to say, if it wasn't for this person, then that wouldn't have happened. So that was a good thing for me, or is a good thing for me, but you have to know how to like, pretty much only you're going to save you. I would actually say that aside from like all the abuse stuff and the abuse evidence channels and the Cash for Kids system and human cash cow systems and the stuff that I have going on now with the human cash cow systems and just the general situation from escaping my previous situation, like, I think that like this isn't even like my first escaping wasn't even my first realization that nobody cares, nobody's going to save you, you have to save yourself. I would actually say that the pairs and the hypersexuality was my first, and the possession was my first, the first thing that really helped me realize the whole nobody cares, you have to save yourself thing. The audio recording thing isn't even really working, but I'd said I started to realize this in early elementary, even kind of at 4, but once that 8 to 9 mark and like the possession got really bad, that's when I realized that more. Because nobody cares and not too many people are casting out demons anyways, and that's another story, but that was like my first realization of all that. No one's gonna save you stuff. Even in situations like this, you have to fix your own issues, to be honest. But you also can't hold your abusers in the highest esteem and like you can't still like them, because then you're gonna find some way to like make the whole thing that happened okay. So yeah, but even if you give them too much blame as well, because I also think about in my Chomo file playlist, there's a couple of situations actually with what was he calling himself, the Peter Parker, that's not his real name though, the John Parker dude, and how he would talk about how his siblings and his parents, his mom and dad, would R-word him every day, which is absolutely horrible. But you can't really just like keep talking about that but then know that like you still have the paraphilias, and then like use that as like an excuse to like do the same thing or similar to other people. But there's a lot I could say about that, because it's like people are like really, they give people for objectification reasons anyways. Like, it's not even about like actual love, it's about a bunch of bull crap and desperation, and that's actually where it leads to like the issues. Because I mean, even with paraphilias and like all that stuff and sexual deviancy, it's because like you see yourself and others as an object. And then also you have like a lot of demonization going on with like for example, like PDs and stalking. You think you love the person, but that's really not love, but you think that's what love is. That's like the real issue. Nobody knows what love is. That's actually like that could be the title of the video. But another thing I wanted to throw in is that somebody had responded and said that they hope that he gets drafted so he can know how fragile life is and pretty much get what he deserves. But it's like, getting R-worded by your dad, I'm pretty sure you already know how fragile life is. But this was what I really wanted to talk about. I forgot that I had to even screenshot the other stuff. So the Gerontophile agenda. I feel creepy for being underage, and here goes the minor crisis stuff, and in a relationship with someone a few months younger. And see, what this also goes into is, along with the Gerontophile agenda, as I mentioned before and as I've seen other people mention, people being convinced that 18 is more grown than it actually is. And as I always say, the age of consent is well below 18 anyways, but people have misconstrued that. A lot of people think that the word pedo means anybody who's 18 or older. And it's like crazy that there's people that are like 1 year, a few months from 18 and they think like that. They've really been convinced this stuff by this minor and files crisis stuff that's going on. There's also the people that think that the word pedo means getting with somebody or dating somebody under 18. That's not what that means either. The word actually has nothing to do with who is or isn't 18. And it actually really means attraction to people who haven't even started puberty yet, which is really that's why I just say chomos, the Lemites and paraphiliacs and stuff like that, which of course plenty of people who are sexual predators even have an issue with that. like I talked about and showed from a comment that I got a while ago, one of the usual racial Christian hijacking bullcrappy people, in my video that's called Age of Consent Should Not Exist or something like that. And for the first couple of minutes I show like those dudes' comments, and he edited it and changed it, but it was still bullcrap. It's still pretty bad. And I remember he was talking about someone that's dating a 19-year-old is not a choma because a 19-year-old is an adult. If you think that somebody who's 50-something dating someone their kid's age, or even dating someone that much younger than them, is not being a Thalemite and paraphiliac and a chomo, then that just shows where your mind is. I wonder if they're like Catholic, but it wouldn't make a difference if they were Protestant with that mindset. But that's all really interesting. But overall, like, people don't really know what these terms mean, and there's been a lot of misconstruing of these different terms. And all their misconstruing really does, as I say all the time, is normalize perversion up to a certain extent. So you can be a chomo up to a certain extent. And I also forgot to say, I really hate how, like, due to ageism with laws and stuff, and like how younger people are always going to get charged for things that older people wouldn't even get looked at funny for doing or saying, or they just get charged for stupid stuff like running away. The 6-year-old that got locked up and went to jail for throwing Skittles, stuff like that I've talked about throughout the years. Like, if a grown person threw Skittles, nothing's gonna happen to them. Like, it's all just really, really stupid. I've never liked the whole thing of I don't know how to say it, but let me just say that dude's quote: "When the mother is psychotic, they treat her children because that's how power works." I've never liked the whole thing of like, well, you're being terrorized and you have symptoms from it, and we're all telling you that your abuse is okay and normal because we don't. But if you act out that trauma on somebody else, then there's a problem. Like, I remember, I've talked about this for years, and this lady's situation really was like evident of what I had always said. I've always said that the Mason lawyers and judges that are chomos, triple K, etc., they only ever give dads custody when they're essaying the kids. Other than that, they always want to leave the kids in the hands of the mom to be terrorized. And there was this one lady who had like 3 or 4 kids. And of course, another thing is that also their dad was quote unquote white. And he was essaying the kids, the daughters and the sons. And they were getting bullied at school by the teachers and students for sexually acting out. Like, kids from the school would come and throw rocks through their windows at their house and everything. And like, it was all really, really horrible. I don't even think she ever even got her kids back, to be honest. And it's just a lot of stuff with those situations that's all done on purpose, by design, by the court systems. But like, the whole thing of like just people playing the usual mind games of trying to like profit off of people's abuse situations, or even if they're not profiting off of it, people just egging on people's abuse and then blaming them for their trauma symptoms. Like, I mean, even if you're the quiet person because you're being abused, you're gonna get treated like crap for that. If you tell jokes and you like have a good sense of humor and you're a quote unquote class clown or whatever because of your abuse symptoms, you're gonna be treated like crap by teachers and students for that, even though that's not even harming anybody. But people have an issue with you whether you're harming anybody or not. So it's like there's always different excuses, because as I always say, we're all narcs, we're all evil, and we're all manipulative, and we're all playing games with each other. Everything is about alchemy and manipulation. But anywho, I think I said everything I needed to say. So to get to the point of the Gerontophile agenda, I mentioned situations like this before. I have a recent video, the thumbnail, the 13-year-old who's being told he was a pedo for dating a 12-year-old and that he doesn't deserve rights, or maybe it was even a girl. In one of my earlier Gerontophile agenda videos, there was the girl who was like, I'm 17, but the guy like is 15, and I know it's gross and it's horrible. It should be horrifying to people that youth are being made to feel like they're quote unquote pedos, a term that's used very wrong anyways, for dating people their own age. And people are always talking about like how a lot of the youth are like more quote unquote conservative, or more so they're becoming asexual. And due to like what I would, a lot of people talk about the fact that a lot of people are forced on neurotoxin psychotropics start in infancy, which cause sexual dysfunction, PSSD, libido, brain damage, not having puberty or not finished, and stuff like that. I also talk about the Marine Kingdom side, and it's also just the fact that, like, it seems like, well, not it seems like, youth are being scared out of having relationships because they're being made to feel like, oh, well, if I date somebody my own age, I'm a quote-unquote pedo. It makes sense that everybody's claiming to be asexual now. Or not everybody, but a lot of people. And it's like, the statistics are going up. My boyfriend is 2 months younger than me, and I feel weird for it. I feel weird being friends with people born any more than 2 months after me, because they would technically be born a year after me. October baby. Like, it baffles me how people are attracted to others so much younger than them. What the genuine F? Same, my GF is like 6 months younger. It's such a crappy feeling. Sorry about the breakup, I knew it wouldn't last. Yeah, I've been talking about this for months, and I feel like these screenshots, which I got like the other day or something, can't really remember, maybe 2 days ago, they're like a very wonderful example of what I've been talking about for however many months I've been talking about what I'm now calling the Gerontophile agenda. And I was already talking about what I was calling the minor crisis even before I even started talking about what I'm now calling the Gerontophile agenda. And both of them go hand in hand. And all of it also revolves around the social justice warrior agenda and all the fake social justice warrior bullcrap that's been going on, which is all performative anyways, as I talk about pretty often. So, I'm trying to think of what else I could say with that. But, yeah, like, it goes back to what I've been saying, which is that actual chomos or actual, like, sexual predators, and even, like, people who are known gerontophiles, like they know they're gerontophiles, those people, and mainly essayed older women, and even younger women, run the Gerontophile agenda. And this goes back to the martyr complex, which I noticed that even people that talk about entrepreneurial type stuff talk about the martyr complex, but in a different sense. And I didn't even know that, like, it was actually something that people really had, like, peeped like that. But actually, I'm not the only one who's talked about the issue of people having different forms of martyr complexes. And a martyr in the sense that they feel like the only way to not be the bad guy is to be the victim. So they have to be the person dating the person that's too old for them. And other than that, if they're dating someone their age, they're the bad guy. Which I also talk about a form of this in my Sixth Commandment culture / Red Rum is Evil playlist, or whatever. All of it is a warped American way of thinking. Overall, the thing about this is that people have so much sexual trauma, especially, like, not even just from things that happen in person, but people are, like, raised by the internet. So people are getting on the internet, talking to people that they probably shouldn't have, because they probably weren't told not to. And they're doing things that they shouldn't have. They're being manipulated into things because they don't want to be mean to the person. They want to be quote-unquote nice, or maybe typically they're just used to being essayed and neglected and treated like crap. So they're looking for, like, love, and they're desperate and stuff. And they get traumatized. And now they have these, like, weird views of, like, sexuality, not to mention stuff that's normalized by the school system and medical system. And the safe places stuff where, like, you're supposed to, like L.T. Corbis talked about, you're supposed to, like, run to go talk to some teacher about sexuality things that you're scared to talk to your parents about because you feel like they may not agree that, like, you're watching porn all day or something. And so, like, anywho, it's like people who who know nothing about normal relationships that are really traumatized because, for one, there's a principality of perversion over the nation. In some states more than others. Like, if you're closer to the ocean, there's more Marine Kingdom bullcrap and predatory mess going on. Most people, male or female, have been essayed or had early sexual exposure. In some states more than others. Like, Georgia is known for having a principality of perversion. People always talk about the alphabet stuff, but nobody ever talks about the fact that you can't even really meet a kid who hasn't been essayed that's male or female. Like I talked about in the little 3 months of school I went to there. All the kids, male or female, had been essayed, or most of them had, or they know somebody who had, or their parent had been, and they were, like, hypersexual, the usual sexual fluidity or whatever. They had to, like, lock the bathrooms and, like, ban the bathrooms for most of the day because since a lot of the kids were hypersexual, the girls were getting with, well, pretty much people were just getting with each other. The gender didn't matter. The girls were, like, doing stuff with girls in the bathrooms, the boys were doing stuff with boys, vice versa. People were getting with the teachers. That's a common situation, though, unfortunately, that essay, because that's what it is. But all types of stuff. And I even think back to that girl I mentioned in one of my recent paraphilias and Gerontophile videos. The girl who was essayed when her mom was living with some people and their son essayed her. He was like 14, she was 9 or 8. And then she was like always making posts and always talking about how she was trying to figure out how to manipulate her teachers into getting with her, and how she wishes like she could be a babysitter. Not really to like do something to the kids, but more so like the parents, but either way that's like pretty risky. She was always talking about like secretly wanting to like assault her friends and stuff like that. And then of course the corn addiction doesn't help. It adds to the demonization, and it makes things worse. Like people who like are neglected, or they get essayed but they don't have access to corn, but can also like get away from the essay situation quicker, it can definitely be like a lot better for them. But anywho, don't remember what I was getting at. But POCD, which I don't even know if I ever mentioned what this stands for, but quote unquote pedo, obsessive compulsive disorder. I've mentioned that a lot of youth are being given this these days. No, I think I was talking about the thing that like people who have never seen like a decent relationship or had a real decent relationship, they're the ones that are like running the Gerontophile agenda. And like so many people are so traumatized, everybody's so turned out, people have been turned out. The Willie Lynch letter, the Homo Manifesto, those are like similar types of MK Ultra, as I mentioned before in other videos. They're both forms of like pretty much fracturing people, turning people out, divide and conquer, dividing people in the family and the ethnicity. But the Homo Manifesto is like a global version that applies to all people of the Willie Lynch letter, and buck breaking, which is a form of vagovasal, because I was saying it wrong for years, but vagovasal, which is a sodomy ritual, essay ritual, which causes DID and turns people out. It was done to the slaves, the Europeans. They did it to their own kids that they would sex traffic, and it's a form of MK Ultra. Of course, not everybody's like getting like anal R-worded, but like there's different forms and different ways to like turn people out and traumatize people and give people DID, obviously. But that's like the one of the, I don't know, it depends. But my point is that like everybody's been turned out, people are really traumatized, relationships are bullcrap, they're about objectification. That's one of the biggest things with any sexual issue, is that you don't really like know what love is or love the person. Like even with limerence and FPs, which I had a lot when I was when I was elementary age, which I didn't go to middle school or high school anyway, so that's kind of whatever. But like when you have those types of issues, you may think that you love the person, but it's like a lot of attachment issues, and of course trauma dictates sexuality and stuff anyways. Am I about to get stung by a bee? I don't know where it went, but it makes me think back to like when I was talking about stuff that was happening with people I know in person who were Gerontophiles, like they date chomos, or they only date older people or whatever, and they have like a lot of trauma from like being hurt by people that they knew, like friends and family and stuff. And so I was talking about like they're pretty much like trying to make me feel like the bad guy because I'm not a Gerontophile, like I'm not dating like 60-year-olds and stuff. And I remember this one guy was like, the issue is that maybe you're like spending too much time online and in online spaces where people are just saying stupid stuff. And I was like, no, these are people I know in person. But at that point in time, which this is one of my earlier Gerontophile videos, that was before I really started like doing more research, and I realized how common these mindsets of if you're 20 and you're dating a 19-year-old, if you're 18 you're dating a 17-year-old, if you're dating somebody 2 weeks younger than you. That's before I knew like how common those mindsets were, that like dating people your age is bad, you need to date somebody decades older than you. I didn't even know how like widespread this idea actually is. And this is a very American thing as well. like, people even talk about how, like, the age of consent, which it is in America as well, ranges typically from, like, 14 to 16 or 15 to 16. And it's where the people, like, consider stuff like that being a quote-unquote pedo, but that's not what the word pedo means either, actually. But the issue is that, like, people are getting so social justice warrior-fied that, like what somebody said once, when you call everybody a quote-unquote pedo, the word starts to lose its real meaning. But the bigger issue is that kids are being guilt-tripped into dating people that are too old for them and dating actual chomos by being told that they're quote-unquote pedos if they date anybody their age. That's actually the real issue. Aside from even the other stuff and, like, even the flip-flopping of definitions. And I'm trying to think about what else. But yeah, I forgot to say also, another thing that the dude said is that, like, I'm talking to people that have just been, like, sex trafficked their whole life and hurt, and they don't know anything about normal relationships, and there's nothing you can really tell these people to make them think otherwise. And that I need to, like, pretty much I'm being scared out of, like, having friendships and dating people my age and just, like, having normal friendships in general by these people who are, like, triggering me. And but the thing about it is that I eventually realized that this is actually a very widespread issue of people just, like, playing these types of games. But it seems like sometimes it's bigger among, like, well, I can't even say just, like, quote-unquote white people and then, like, essayed women of any ethnicity. I can't even really say that, which, of course, I mean, with the white label, that could be any ethnicity as well, but I'm trying to think, though. I don't even know if I could even really generalize it, because it seems like this issue is so widespread. But overall, like I always say, one of the things about the Gerontophile agenda is that if you're not in the typical situation that somebody feels like you're more, which puts you at more risk. Like I said, one example, nobody wants to kid. You're being forced, if you really did want to date or even befriend anybody, it's like, it's probably already hard to find people around your age depending on, like, what setting you're in. Like, there's a lot of street kids, obviously, in some states more than others, like the West Coast, NY, etc. But they do so much hiding that it's often hard to find them. So you're pretty much being, like, forced into befriending and dating chomos. And even if you just, like, stay stuck at the friend part, because nobody's going to want you, or most people aren't going to want you around their kids, even if their kids are older than you are, because, well, you're suspicious. Where are your parents at? Why are you out here? Are you screwed up in the head? Are you hiding from somebody? You're practically grown, etc., etc. You're being pushed and forced into befriending people who are most likely going to, like, R-word you and stuff and manipulate you into things. Because unless you want to be, like, by yourself, people watching, or, like, just sitting in the woods staring off into space or something all day, or behind a building, you're gonna, like, befriend your only options. I also think about that guy's story that I mentioned before, who wasn't allowed to have friends growing up because his dad was a known pedo and nobody wanted their kid to play with the molested kid. So my phone ended up going dead, and I accidentally, like, edited out some of the things for, like, that last part revolving around the whole thing I mentioned with the Gerontophile agenda. And one example I commonly give with street kids about how it's also really risky, because it can definitely be used to discriminate against people who aren't in, like, typical situations. Even going into the whole same stage of life thing, you're not in the same stage of life as other people your age and maybe even older, so you can only get with whoever is in the quote-unquote same stage of life, whatever that bullcrap means. But commonly that could mean some 45-year-old or something like that, maybe older, unless you get lucky. And actually, I think it's a good thing I remember the whole same stage of life thing, especially when it comes to the street kid or the person who isn't or has never been in school. Because I know what Americans, they like to use these school arguments. Well, like, who's college age, who's high school age, or who could be high school age and who could be college age. Which, with the college age thing, that really just depends on when your parents let you go. But stuff like that. Okay, so I'm just going to read off some bullet points, and hopefully this won't end up too long, but it probably will. It kind of already is. I probably already wrote this on another page I also have to read, but it's whatever. People are also leaving out the fact that you can be harmed by somebody younger than you. And then I put not victim blame. I'm trying to remember what that was supposed to stand for. Okay, I remember now. So, I know that like most people aren't going to get this because they're not even taught to think for themselves, and they're just taught to like go along with whatever like people are saying and the masses, but I get that when you mention the fact that you can be harmed by somebody younger than you, people are also going to feel some type of way, because in every like abuse situation, the victims are always blamed. So I know people who like have been through trauma, when they hear this, they don't hear what I'm actually saying. They hear like the bullcrap where somebody's like some 5-year-old seduced them or something like that. Obviously that's not what I'm talking about whatsoever. Although I can say if somebody's already been SA themselves, and like maybe the other person has like some type of like severe like real disability, then like even an extremely young person could do something to them. But I mean, even honestly not with that, because I know that like when it comes to like a younger person, if they like do or say something weird to you and you do want to tell somebody, you're worried about, I mean, you're probably going to always be worried about the other person getting in trouble, but especially if you're already in an unsafe situation where you're commonly getting framed for stuff, you may not want to say anything anyways, because you know that you're going to be blamed, and it's going to be easy for you to get blamed because they're the younger person. Although, I remember a situation when I was 4, I consider this my first victim, quote unquote, which I could make a whole video about this, but the first, this isn't the first time it's happened, but the first situation I remember sexually acting out on anyone else, I didn't even find out this person's age till I was 14, because I found some way to reach out to his dad to like apologize about the whole situation, although I did tell everybody when I was 4, but for whatever reason, even though apparently, I guess no one really knew, because my mom didn't even know how old he was, and then when I was like, no, he's actually like a year or 2 younger than me, then it was like, well, but he had got blamed for it, and I never really understood why, especially because I said that like the whole situation was my fault, and I initiated the whole situation. But from what I found out at 14, if I was 4, which I was, then that means he was either 2 or 1, but I guess maybe 2. But that made the whole situation even worse. And I don't know, that just came to mind with the whole younger person thing, but I don't know why he was blamed for that, because it wasn't his fault at all. But my dad just felt some type of way about him after that. And that actually does remind me of other side situations though. Like, I remember this one situation where my dad had this one girlfriend who she was pretty neglectful to her son. She wasn't like horrible to him, but like she had like a whole bunch of like crazy sexual trauma and stuff with her mom. Not that that's an excuse, but it just made her the typical male-centered stereotype, to make a long story short. So her son slept on a box spring and everything, but he was a couple years younger than me. And I remember, I think this was the second time my dad had went to West Virginia to pretend he was going to marry this girl. Not even going to go into that. He was like, if you don't do this, this, and that, then I'm going to tell everyone that you wanted to do this. And luckily I was able to avoid a lot of that stuff that he was trying to get me to do. And of course, he's not like a bad or mean person. I mean, that's literally just what happens in abuse situations and neglect and stuff. And then of course he was already like addicted to corn, but luckily his mom was caring enough to like notice that and like ban it off of his phone, which he got lucky with that, because most people, their parents and whoever don't even care enough to do that. But yeah, so there was that. That's one situation I think of. Now of course, with situations that I've been through with this, I'm not mad at anybody. I wasn't mad at him or any of the other people I'm going to mention then. Like, honestly, I've done worse stuff at a way younger age, but still, I mean, I understand why some people are, like, mad at, like, people that have done stuff to them, but, like, I don't know. I don't feel like it's really, for me personally, it's not something for me to be mad about. It's just, like, whatever, and I don't know what else to say about it. And then what's the other situation? I have the video where I mentioned that that 12-year-old who lied and told me he was older than me at the time. He told me he was 16, but apparently I never really found out exactly how old he was, but supposedly he was like 12 or something. I'm not really sure if that was true. I hope not. But of course, I don't date people. I never have dated anybody actually, so it's not even like the situation was like that. But he was running around telling so many lies. It's like, shoot, if push could have came to shove, I probably could have. Well, nah. I mean, maybe. If the parents really wanted to press charges, they could have. But I still wasn't that much older than he supposedly actually was. But it still was just like, I just didn't even like him like that. We were barely even like, I would say we were like associates. I already had a lot of trauma to the point where I didn't call anybody friends. But I have that video. A recent situation, or well, more recent, when I was in Cali in like the earlier days, my first couple months there was this whole situation with this one boy. Not exactly sure exactly how old he was either, but I would say maybe like the youngest he could have been was maybe like 14, but I don't know. Anyways, him and his friend had like saw me, and like they saw me like staying in the woods, and then to make a long story short, he tried to like force me into a whole bunch of bull crap by saying, even though I always told people that I was like 18, but like I don't know, people, it's just really annoying, that whole situation where like people feel like you need to debate with them about your business. But he claimed he was 16. Not really sure how true that was, but that didn't really make much of a difference. But he was like, if you don't do all the things that I want you to do, then I'm gonna tell the police that you're homeless, underage, and etc., etc., etc. And there's a lot I could say about people who will pull things like that, or people who even just like play law enforcement games, like the whole Shane situation, to be honest, that happened recently. It actually kind of makes me think about that somewhat. The Shane situation was way worse though. Luckily he didn't end up telling the police, and his friend was actually like, his friend felt bad because I guess this boy had like did this before. Usual stuff would he had been essayed. His dad was wherever. His mom didn't give a crap and wasn't that nice. I don't know if I already mentioned the porn addiction thing, but yeah. And I remember I told him that I used to be similar to him, and honestly worse when I was like elementary age especially, and that the only person that's going to help you with these types of issues and getting over this and like getting over sexual addiction and demonization is yourself. No one else is going to help you. No one's really going to care. And then you're also a boy, which means there's going to be more biased. Anytime you slip up with these types of issues, being a boy and also being younger, because younger people get worse charges for everything. And once you slip up, like, nobody's going to give a crap, and it's just going to screw a lot of stuff up for you. And so I'm trying to think about what else to say with that. But luckily his friend was able to talk him into leaving me alone, and he just kept saying we have to go before we get in trouble because we got to go eat dinner or something like that. But I remember he kept trying to like give me all these different reasons why I needed to give him oral by telling me his dad left and they were supposedly from Mexico, and their mom, which that none of that was true, but well, the dad thing, but not the Mexico thing. Something about his brother died recently and a whole bunch of bull crap. And then the sibling essay I went through, which as I always say, anytime there's a situation where there's sibling essay or the siblings are like quote unquote disciplining each other, especially with like the usual corporal punishment abuse, that means that there's family dysfunction in general. And that can also be really common with like a single parent, because whether it's a single mom or a dad, you'll notice that like the oldest sibling, or even the younger one, if like the older ones have like a disability, like a real disability or something, you'll see them like trying to punish the siblings and keep the younger siblings quiet and keep them from touching stuff in the store or whatever, to try to like keep the single mom or dad from like having their usual outburst of all the regrets they have, or because of all the regrets they have and stuff like that. But anywho, sibling essay is always encouraged by the parents and allowed by the parents. And for me, most of it would have never happened if it wasn't for that. So like my mom loved the whole situation, obviously. Which, I mean, well, she did because she was the one getting it to happen. And so I think about things like that as well. But I can never, like, be the person running around, like, blaming other kids for it. And it's like, crap, I still think about how badly I was treated by teachers and students, even for things that didn't happen that were just rumors. But with all the stuff that I had done and said in elementary, the teachers just, like, believed the rumors too. But it's all really interesting how that all goes. So, this goes back to what was actually a Slab City quote. I've definitely seen this said before somewhere else, but earlier I mentioned the quote, if you call everybody a pedo, then who really is? Or I think I said it wrong. I think I said the word loses its meaning, which I have seen people talk about that as well. But in a video that I made a year ago, I go over like this this article about Slab City and like different stuff like that. And then this dude had said that quote, and he's definitely not wrong. And I think about something I heard about with this midget lady. Well, I guess that's considered like an insult, but this lady was some type of dwarfism. I probably should edit some stuff out. Anywho, she wanted a boyfriend, and people were like saying that she did have a boyfriend at one point, but her boyfriend had left because people kept calling him a pedo and insulting him and stuff. Now, going back to the definition of pedo, it is like the attraction of prepubescent children, and like even the attraction like prepubescent people are people that appear to be like actual children, like not like people who started puberty. I mean, yeah, that could still be a paraphilia, but there's a lot of things I could say with that, like was he actually quote-unquote pedo, or people just saying that. But one thing that I've said since I was 9 or 10 is that one thing you want to watch out for is that if you don't feel like you're the victim in the situation, even if the person is younger than you, but they're like predatory and all that, you still have to remember that your kids or your kids' friends are going to be the ones at risk. Which I'm going to go into, or maybe I guess I could go into now so I can remember. Oh yeah, and then I also put a bullet point. You can get with prepubescent adults. And then that can also still revolve around the paraphilia, which I kind of already said. But I've mentioned before how like a lot of people know when you first get on IG, on Instagram. Back when I used to use that, I started when I was 10 and I stopped kind of then pretty much. I never did really post stuff, and I never post pictures of myself anywhere. But you may know that like you get these like Indian and Arabic guys that like come in your DMs and somehow automatically know that like you're a kid, and they want to get with you even though they've never seen you. And for all they know, you could actually be like a 75-year-old man, but they can sense that you're like a kid from the clairvoyance. Yeah, I remember there was this one Indian guy that came in my DMs, and he had a picture of him, his wife, and his son. And he was talking about some "you're so hot" and some pretty much just like trying to get me to date him and telling me to date him and marry him and stuff. And I was like, so you want me to date you, but you're 65 and I'm 10, but would you let your son date anybody? Would you let your son date me? And he was like, no, my son's only 9 years old. He's too young to date anybody. And it's like, okay, but, well, I mean, shoot, would you get with your son? And it's like, how is your son too young to date? But he's the same age as me, but you would date me. And I even had a recent debate with some people about that. They were like, well, we wouldn't let our kids date anybody. Well, they were like definitely trying to get with me. And I was like, well, shoot, I mean, would you let your kids date anybody? And they were like, nah, I wouldn't. I don't let my kids date anybody. And maybe like when they're older, or when they're 18, because you make better choices when you're an adult, I feel. And it's like, what better choices would they make at 18 when they're already just about 18? They're 16 and 17. I mean, what's the shoot? I mean, if that's how that really worked, and being quote-unquote grown, they would already be making the quote-unquote better choices, whatever that means. And the usual games people play, it's like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie though, I do feel better hearing stuff like that. They could still be lying, but like, I feel like it's better because a lot of people, when they hear like sexual predatory people talking about getting with people that are too young for them, they say things like, well, how would you feel if it was your daughter or your son? And they expect the person to have like a response that actually makes sense, but a lot of these people will get with their own kids, and people seem to, I won't even say that people forget, they try to like act like that's not the reality. That's really how that is. Okay, last couple of bullet points. So, going back to the whole 18 thing, or even the age of consent thing. Hold up. Okay, so I talk about how worldwide the age of consent is mainly 14 to 16, even in the US, but people seem to think otherwise. And I know I mentioned that like the age of majority in some states is still 17 secretly. In some states it's still 21. And I know in some places the age of consent is also 12. And then I also mentioned how lawyers and judges will always tell people that there are no laws against who you can date, only who you can have sex with, which that's really not even that true. And of course, if you're being like abused by a family friend or a family member, then it's just whatever, and they're really even more not chargeable. Realistically, unless you have somebody who's older than you to fight whoever did whatever to you with you, then it's always gonna like be jack diddly. Crap, I still remember before I came to Cali, this boy I had met back in a little bit of school I went to in NC, he was telling me about how he had met some girl through a friend, and her dad had got her pregnant in Cali, and she tried to sue him, but she lost. And there's even like plenty of laws put in place where you can be married off the sum chomo, and you can't divorce till 18. But also, if they get a conservatorship over you or something, then you really can't get out. But I mean, there's a lot of issues that would make getting out harder. Like, I even think about how people, how DV women try to like talk junk about like people like the Menendez brothers and say, well, they were grown men and they could have got out. But for women in domestic violence, it's different. Actually, no, that's nowhere near the same situation. When it's a parent or family member, no matter how old you are, it's always going to be harder. And also, like 18 or whatever isn't a grown man anyways, but that's still besides the point. Like, if there were two little girls, the whole situation would be totally different. But that's a whole nother video, to be honest. Anywho, point is, the Gerontophile agenda is helping to grownify people that are certain ages, pretty much. I've already mentioned how, like, now there's people that literally want to debate with you and claim that anybody 16 or 17 plus is an adolescent, even though adolescence extends to at least 32, but more notably 25, even though it's really older than that. But 25 is like the more notable, well-known age that adolescence extends to. In fact, it's actually 9 to 25, notably. So it's weird that like people are now trying to have these arguments and they're saying, oh well, if any like person that's 16 plus and is trying to act like they're still a teenager is saying they're a teenager, they're really not a teenager, they're an adult. And it's like, it's really scary that even kids who aren't even that far away from these ages are being brainwashed into believing this, and into believing that, like that bullcrap that girl was saying, there's certain things that an adult can say to a kid, that an adult can't say to a kid, that a kid can say to a kid. You mean two high schoolers having a basic conversation about, I don't know, sexual jokes or dating or whatever, and now like people are trying to make it seem like that's like Aleister Crowley. Like, people, it's all just scary. Like, honestly, I don't even know what to say. Like, this is no different from the people that have like a lot of trauma with like guys, especially like in places where there's like a really high principality perversion anyway. So like, especially the guys are more risky. Like in a place where I'm at now, it's just like I almost choked, but it's just like the people that have so much trauma with like guys to where they act like all guys or like whatever way. It's kind of like pretty much when you have like sexual trauma, you start to like see things in like a pretty warped way, and you just don't have like a good view. Like, I mean, if you had two parents that were decent, you really couldn't be a misogynist or a feminist. If you had a dad that was safe and healthy, then you really, even if like all the other guys in the town were dangerous, you would know at least your dad likes you or loves you and will protect you. But if you don't have that, then you're going to see things however. And of course, like, the parent trauma will cause all types of sexual issues anyways. It's just like that because all of this stuff is being viewed out of a lens of trauma and also brainwashing from like the media. And what people don't get is that they're doing nothing but being conditioned into adultifying and grownifying kids and making people seem more grown than they really are, which is exactly what actual real chomos would want. Claiming that people who are 17 and 18 and 19 aren't teenagers, none of that stuff is going to benefit anybody. And at the end of the day, the teenager term was made by America for advertisement reasons and like marketing, but that's kind of even besides the point. But still, like, that term doesn't really hold any grounds anyways. But and then so going back to the whole you're legal thing, so all this AOC arguments and this grownifying people and claiming that like anybody 16 plus is a quote-unquote pedo and stuff like that, it does nothing but help the chomos, because like I already talked about the videos that you can find out there, like one I found, and even the situations that I have in person, and I'm sure plenty of other people will have. Well, somebody will be like chasing you around saying, well, it doesn't matter if you're 16 or if you're 17 or whatever, because you're still legal. Then I can also mention the dude that was always following me around in Cali, asked me if I was 18 yet. I remember like I was at the park with this lady once, and he saw us, and then his eyes lit up, and he came over there to like harass and spit the usual bullcrap game. And even a recent situation with this dude who thinks he's a preacher, this weird dude who's always like saying Bible verses and stuff. This was around Thanksgiving, but I saw him again like 2 Thursdays ago, because apparently he works with I don't know if it's a ministry, but they give out food on Thursdays, and unfortunately he's there apparently, because I rarely ever go. But anywho, I remember he kept asking me about if I was legal. This quote that this quote that I heard from some guy that talks about trauma and narc parents. I haven't watched any of his videos in like well over a year. I don't remember even what his channel name was, but I remember in this one video that was really off-putting to me, especially because I was already like dealing with the whole street kids aren't seen as kids thing. He had said that in a healthy, normal family, where there aren't like control issues, parenting stops at 18. And to be truthfully honest, in a healthy society, in a real family, no, that's not true whatsoever. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he's a therapist, but I can't really remember. But yeah, that quote was very unrealistic, to be honest. But this goes along with the 18 obsession. And I know for one of my videos, I even use this thumbnail screenshot where somebody was like, is 18 a magic age or something like that? And that comment was in reply to somebody that was saying they don't believe that anybody under 18 should be having babies. And it's like, okay, well, why in the world and what in the world? And the video was about teen pregnancy. And like these people that they had a baby, and I can't remember which video it was, but overall, like, that's a really wild comment. And like a lot of people would even say that that's too young, but I always say it's not even the age that people are having kids, it's the reason that they're having them and with who, because it typically revolves around a lot of like trauma stuff and no sexual education. But overall, like, that's a really wild statement to make. But all that goes back to the 18 obsession. And I mean, you can't drink in the US till 21, so I mean, you could even like try to play that whole 21 game and claim nobody should have kids under 21. And unfortunately, all the smart people don't have kids, but all the people passing down generational trauma and that believe abuse is okay and that shouldn't be having them or having them. But should you, I mean, that's just like a really wrong and off comment overall. But anywho. Okay, so a quote from this lady, and then I'm about done pretty much, I think. This can also go back to the whole, if you call everyone a pedo, who really is? So, this lady would always talk about how all her friends were pedos, quote unquote. Chomos, maybe. Pedos, definitely not by definition either. She was also always talking about this one lady. She was definitely a chomo, but not a pedo by definition, but if you want to be honest, she shouldn't have been doing what she was doing. But as far as like some of the other situations she mentioned, it's kind of like iffy. I know she mentioned this one lady who was like 40 something, but she only like getting with like teenagers and people in like their 20s and early 20s. Definitely chomo, definitely not a pedo, because that's not prepubescent. But realistically, with the stuff that she had going on, I definitely would call her a Thalemite. Then another thing. She mentioned this one friend, and she was always saying that, like, he's not a real, cause he liked guys, and, he was also, I guess he was trans, and she was always saying, he's not a real trans, he's just a pedo. And I'm like, okay, what is that even supposed to mean? But, he was, like, 27 and 28 as well. But, he was, wait a minute. He was, like, dating people that were, like, 18, 21, 20. It's definitely not a pedo. But chomo, definitely. But also, it's like, does he have paraphilias where he only likes younger people? Or is he just, like, dating people that he has something in common with and actually likes? There's also that thing to it as well. And then it's, it goes back to the objectification. Like, with all the age wars going on, I guess I could say, it's just making people forget even more what relationships are supposed to be about. Now, instead of getting with somebody that you like and you have something in common with that you've known for years, or maybe you haven't, now people are, like, playing these, like, age gap games and this weird stuff and all this, I don't even know what else to call it, but, like, let's say you've known somebody for, like, crap, what's even a good example? I can't even think of really a good example right now, but I need to get back to the point because I almost forgot it. So, I remember that, like, she said this, and I remember, like, how people, due to racial bullcrap, they were always claiming that, like, we were either dating, she was my mom, she was my sister, she was my cousin, and at one point, some dude even asked me if I was her son. But, like, I remember she was like, I'm tired of people claiming that we're dating because they're all chomos, or, they're all pedos. She didn't say chomos. Because I'm not a pedo and everybody else is one, so they think that I'm one. And honestly, a lot of those people are, like, full-blown pedos, and, like, they even like babies and everything. So, yeah, there was that. Not with the friends, though. These were, like, other people, like, in the quote-unquote community that I'm talking about now. They had all types of weird stories going on in their head about us. Like, I remember, she was staying in this pallet, and people were claiming that, like, we were doing stuff. It was a whole bunch of weird, sick stuff that people are making up in their head, but that's a really common thing with, like, limerence and FPs and sexual issues, is that, like, the demons, like, help you make up weird stuff in your head. Like, I even think about the whole thing with the Shane dude and, like, him getting the police to help him sexually harass me and making up these stories in his head that I was, like, sleeping with other grown men outside that weren't him, and he was getting jealous of over, like, stuff that didn't exist. So, yeah, I think about that part as well, but I'm getting at the point that, I remember that one of the first things she said to me on the first day we met was that she was going to shove her burrito down my throat. Now, of course, I can already pick this type of stuff up from people, so I already knew that she had been, like, essayed a lot, even, like, in recent times, or recent enough times. She was 26 when I met her, and I'm trying to think about what else to say with that. Oh, yeah, the point that I was getting at, if a guy would have said some of the things to me if a guy would have said the things to me that she had said to me, they would have been a quote-unquote pedo. I also think about the bias with a lot of this stuff. Like, even her, like, claiming in recent times, the whole "you're too opinionated to be a child who's never had sex before." But then she would always like go on these rants about her sexual trauma. Not that I care, because people always feel comfortable telling me stuff, but just the bias. Her sexual trauma, or not even really that. Her sex life, other people's sex lives, the quote-unquote pedo friends, the elderly lady, or I guess she was like 50-something, who was supposedly getting with the dude, the 27-year-old dude who was a quote-unquote pedo, and all the different stuff that she would tell me that I never asked for. And then like there were these rumors that people were spreading about this lady, and they were like she's sleeping with a married man but wants to act like she can tell other people. Actually, no, that's not what's happening. She had some dude she shouldn't have married anyways because he was racist, but they ended up divorcing for him to marry somebody else to get paid to get them citizenship. But people were all in her business and dead wrong, and they were always saying, I mean, I guess technically by papers, but it was just so annoying because it's like, why are you even telling me this? And then evidently you don't really know the lady or the dude that well because they're technically still together even though he's toxic. But that's just not what's even happening. But there was so much rumor spreading for you to be telling me stuff that you shouldn't if I'm a quote-unquote child, and those stupid terms like that. But anywho, so she's also another one of the people that will like go on these like rants with me and try to make me feel like, in fact, she is one of the people, no, she is one of the first people that tried to do the whole pedo crap with me and make me feel some type of way for talking to people who are even older than me because I wasn't in school and they were. And like when it wasn't summertime, like I already really didn't know where to find people my age. And like it's funny because she's always telling me that I need to talk to people my age, and she was always telling me that then as well. But then when I do, I'm a quote-unquote pedo because they're in school and I'm not, even though like a lot of half of them were older than me, so it was all just a lot of bull crap. But that's how these people are. They have like all these like weird flip arounds going on in their head. And she's also the person I think about when I mention the people that are like, okay, pretty much Gerontophiles typically never stop being Gerontophiles. And this can even go into the whole thing with the girl that was on like most 16-year-olds wouldn't date a 14-year-old. How in the world would you know what most 16-year-olds supposedly would and wouldn't do when you've been quote-unquote dating 45-year-olds since 12, which isn't dating? And so now you have this weird stuff going on in your head, and you're like getting bullied for like trauma symptoms. You don't really know. Shoot, she knows less than I do about like trying to befriend people your age and trying to date people your age. So it's like, how are you going to try to make me feel bad because I'm not with some 45-year-old man? And this also goes into like the people that'll like they'll like ask you if you're like a virgin so they can like, this is really more common with women, really, especially older women, but sometimes even people like around your age will like ask you if you're a virgin, or if they think you are, they'll like make fun of you for it, but really it's because they're jealous of you because they feel like you haven't made the same mistakes that they've made. That may have not been their fault either. They may have been assault, but I'm not even really talking about that necessarily. But that can also go into this whole Gerontophile people thing, and like how they'll play these like games with you. It kind of reminds me of like race semantics. I guess I could call it sexual semantics or parasemantics. And of course, as she said, well, it's weird to me because I've never been attracted to people younger than me. First of all, why do you even have to go younger? And also, 1 to 2 or 3 years younger isn't anything crazy, but it's like you don't even really have to, it doesn't even really just have to be younger people. I mean, people in your age range is what you should be dating. And I'm not about to do anything crazy because traumatized people feel like if I'm not doing crazy stuff and putting my life on the line, then I'm a quote-unquote pedo. And of course, as I already said, I've never dated anybody anyways, and without sex, there is no sexuality. So you also can't really be any paraphilia or any quote-unquote sexuality too much, or really at all, if you're not really like having sex with anyone. At that point, it's really just like OCD type stuff. And then, so Gerontophiles typically will always be Gerontophile. So like these women especially, really, who are in these like 25 37 age gaps, sometimes like they're desperate and they wanted love, and then the dude is also desperate. And I know like with this situation with this person, the dude didn't even like her. In fact, when they initially got together, he technically wasn't supposed to because of stuff for like a job he had, and like he was like something with like the job status, kind of like how teachers aren't supposed to date the students even if they're legal. It was something like that. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but he really wasn't even supposed to be dating her. But then also they originally agreed to a one-night stand, which she told me about for whatever reason. But that's what they agreed to. But of course, due to soul ties that people pretend don't exist, she got attached and he used her to get her to write a resume for him to get this job in another county. And then he used it as an excuse for why they had to break up, because he never wanted to date her. That's not even what they agreed to. But he used it as an excuse for them to break up. Once he was like, I have to move because I have to get the job. He really didn't like her. He just thought that she looked nice. And that goes back to the objectification. And of course, like, people who are in age gaps like this, they'll be like, well, I'm grown and stuff like that. But it's like, the age gap is still like, I mean, it's just like a lot of stuff with that. And they'll go on these like, I'm grown rants, but it's like, the Gerontophiles that are always calling everybody else a pedo, you'll notice that you'll never see them with anybody their age. And that can even go back to the whole thing with like, when you have like certain issues and like trauma symptoms, sometimes it's hard to like really get with like people your age. And I mean even like in friendships and stuff like that. So you may have to either befriend people that are younger or older. Like I think about when I lived in this one neighborhood, sometimes I would like just hang out with like the younger kids, because in this neighborhood the older kids are mostly like, they like to fight too much. The younger kids did too, but some of them didn't. And then I also think especially about my brother, he was like always considered like too playful, and then also he got held back due to like a lot of stuff with the situation. So in school, and even like in people that he would meet in like different neighborhoods and stuff, they would be like years younger than him, and he would play with like those people, because people his age weren't even like doing all that like Power Ranger stuff and all that. And that's like a good example, because I don't even mean like sexual stuff, I mean like generally. It even goes back to the thing that I say with gifted or highly intelligent, or now called quote unquote neurodivergent or whatever, autistic. Those types of kids will often get with like autistic or gifted or whatever chomos, so stuff like that. And that can even go into the whole same stage of life thing, that bullcrap term that people throw around, but honestly that can really mean anything, and it actually typically, it just doesn't benefit people in like a lot of situations, or people that are like wired certain ways. But anywho, so 25, somewhere from 25 to 26, dating somebody that's somewhere from 35 to 39. And I know like a lot of people say there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, I mean, I don't know. In this one video that I could maybe like put in the description, it was just kind of like, a lot of stuff about it was kind of like iffy to me. But I can honestly get both arguments. But the lady was saying that she feels like age gaps are better when you're like 35-ish on up. But it's like, what do people even mean when they say age gaps? Because like some people will say that no matter how old you are, anything more than 6 years is weird to them. But I always think like 1 to 3 years younger or older, because that's like pretty much in the age range. But like some people will say that that's like iffy, because they'll be like, okay, so like if you're 18, you could date somebody who's 16, or you could date somebody who's 20 and maybe older. But then people will be like, nah, that's people just, it's just stupid stuff. But that depends on the person though, because like, I mean, how much, I guess like, I don't know, it just depends on a lot of stuff. But I mean, it's like a, yeah, I don't know what I was about to say. But anywho, they'll just do the whole I'm grown thing. But it's like, okay, but if somebody else was the same age as the dude that you're with. Okay, hold up, no, that's not what I meant to say. If somebody else was in an age yet the amount of years as you and the dude that you're with, you would have something to say about that, and you'd be running around screaming, pedo, 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 but you're grown, quote unquote, and then the dude doesn't even like you. You got with him because you're desperate, and then vice versa. So, then lastly, because I almost forgot this, the boy that was being trafficked by the U.S. military and was also essayed by his uncle and dad, or dad and grandpa, something like, yeah, uncle and dad. So, we were literally like the same age, but he kept talking about how he didn't want pretty much like he kept saying that he doesn't want to be a pedo and he'd rather wait till I'm 18, which actually reminds me, this lady likes to go on those similar rants about people need to wait till somebody's 18, but it's kind of like, okay, so what's the difference? If they're too old for the person, they're going to be too old when they turn 18 too. But I remember people are like, this boy is either like, he either really doesn't like you and doesn't want to get with you and he's making up stupid excuses for why, or really you both should just like call off the relationship and just get therapy because both of you were screwed up from all your trauma. Because him claiming that like he doesn't want to be a quote unquote pedo and the whole because he's 18 now thing is just like all bullcrap. And yeah, it is, but like at that point in time I didn't even actually know how common like this Gerontophile agenda stuff was, and I think that like the agenda hadn't even gotten that bad yet. But also at that point in time there was the whole thing with the dude who was like 21 and his girlfriend was 17. But I mean, if you take away the age thing, that's like, that doesn't even really have to be the issue. The issue is that he was predatory in general. He would make up excuses for why he had to hang out around like all the 16-year-olds and harass them all day and run around harassing people and stuff. And he would say it's because he's quote unquote watching and protecting his sister. And then his sister was turned out. I always wonder if he did something to her, to be honest. But overall, then what else was it? Oh yeah, and then I remember my older neighbor sister was like, well, they could be at the same stage of life. But I don't even like the same stage of life term because it's overall stupid. It can mean anything. And it's often another thing that's used to make youth feel like quote unquote pedos. And then I think that was it. Okay, no, last thing. So I recently found out that like some of the guys that like sexually harass me all the time and even other people, they also like do that to other kids. But like one girl that told me about it, she's like not even homeless. She like lives with her parents and all that. But sometimes there's like events in the town, and like when she goes to these events she gets harassed, and that's one of the reasons why she was scared to go to anymore for months. And she said that if she told her parents, like they would like protect her and stuff. But one thing that I will say is that if you're somebody who like has people doing stuff to you or trying to, and you actually have somebody to go to tell that will actually do something, definitely tell them. Don't try to be the quote unquote nice person like I recently had a dream about, even though I don't even see myself doing that. But you don't want to be that person, because there's a lot of people, like I even think about with myself, there's a lot of things, even especially before I was out here, that if I did have someone to do something about whatever, they wouldn't have happened or they could have been stopped. So like do not allow things that you don't have to. But this also makes me think even more about how these people are just generally dangerous people. And I even remember like the many conversations that like these guys have had about like other people's kids. But even one time where like some of these dudes are talking about how there's this one 14-year-old girl who was like dating one of the guys in their circle, quote unquote dating, being used and abused by them. Don't know who the girl is though. I don't think I typically ever really see anyone that young like out and about. But then I don't know, you can't even really tell like teens from like people in their 20s. But it's like, I mean, shoot, I guess they know where to go look for people like that. But around like the resource centers, I haven't seen anybody like that age, so I guess they met her somewhere else.